Now, detonate the reality bomb!
I will build a great, great wall.
Some alien race to come down and threaten us.
Is the singularity near?
The truth is out there.
The military-industrial complex.
The 7 mountains of the influencers of culture.
To be as gods, you know.
Change has come to America.
Catapult of propaganda.
From a secure location on top of the ridge in the heart of the beautiful Missouri Ozarks, this is A View from the Bunker. Now, here's Derek Gilbert.
As a fan of archaeology, it's always cool to see stories coming out of the Holy Land, but it's even cooler when you can see an international story and say, I know the guys who were part of that story. Welcome to SkyWatchTV. It's Monday, February 13th, 2017, a special broadcast today as we have guests in studio. Joining me in studio because he also had a vested interest in a personal interest in what was going on there. The man behind the scenes here at SkyWatchTV, Jake Ruchotzke.
Thanks for having me, Derek.
And joining us on the screens behind us via Skype, two of the men who were involved in this exciting discovery from Israel. We welcome Dr. Aaron Judkins and Bruce Hall. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us today.
Hi, Derek and Jake. Thanks for having us on.
We really appreciate it. Good to be on with you.
This was a dig that we had talked with you about, Aaron, last year as you were working to secure funding to cover the cost of your trip. Tell us a little bit about the leader of the expedition, where you were going, and what you hope to find.
Well, the excavation process is co-directed by Dr. Randall Price. I found out about it through Bruce Hall, my colleague here. We were all in the last project together in the search for Noah's Ark in eastern Turkey on Mount Ararat, which was documented in a film called Finding Noah.
Right.
And Bruce and I have been in regular contact and become very good friends and colleagues. And Bruce told me about this excavation going on with Dr. Price that was upcoming at the time in Qumran, search for Dead Sea Scrolls in a new cave. Well, of course, that piqued my interest. And Bruce is on staff with Dr. Price on the dig, and it was a very limited access. Dr. Price only could take 12 to 14 people. And Bruce asked if I was interested in coming along, and of course Dr. Price agreed and said, we need you to come with us and be a part of our team. So that's how I got involved on the team, and we all met over in Qumran, which is right near the Dead Sea on the northwest side of the Dead Sea. This is where they found the Dead Sea Scrolls in 1947. So this is a hugely important work because we knew that caves 1 through 11 were found over a period of 10 years from 1947 and 1957. And this is where the body of work from the Dead Sea Scrolls came from. And to be able to go search for this new cave that was discovered but had never been excavated just held immense potential for new material. So the fact that we were allowed to be able to be a part of this operation with the Israeli Antiquity Authority called Operation Scroll was very important. So Bruce and I teamed up with Dr. Price to go join him on this dig.
Now, Bruce, the announcement by the Israeli Antiquities Authority just came out at the end of last week, and they are calling this now Cave 12. How significant is it to add another cave to the official list of Dead Sea Scrolls, the caves at Qumran?
Well, I believe it's incredibly important because it has been 60 years since another cave has been added to the original 11. And so we're so excited to be a part of that because people have been looking for other caves with scrolls and scroll jars, but no one's been able to come up with them. And the naysayers out there have gone one step further, and they would say they're all found. You'll never find another one. So it's kind of like the naysayers with the King Herod the Great's tomb. They used to say prior to 2006 that King Herod, his tomb would never be found. And of course, archaeologists found it in 2006. So now we get to have a little something against the naysayers and say, yes, there is another cave. And so we think that's outstanding. And of course, we hope that there's going to be a 13th cave and a 14th cave. And we hope to be a part of that for years to come.
So let me ask you guys, what technology was used to determine this was one of the, like, how did the process go about of determining this is one of the caves, and what did you anticipate finding inside of this cave?
Well, I believe in 1993, the Israeli Antiquity Authority did a cursory survey of the caves in the area. There are some 300 caves in the area. And they knew that there was a potential for other finds, so they did a cursory survey. And then Dr. Price, realizing the potential of other finds in these other caves, really decided, you know, this particular cave would be a good potential to excavate in. No one really knew or thought there would be anything in this cave. Even the Israeli archaeologists were somewhat skeptical about it, but because it's close proximity to Qumran, Dr. Price decided, because he had been there, he decided it was a very good candidate. And, you know, because of the you know, situation in Israel, it's very difficult to get a project like this granted and to get the necessary permission. So the Israeli Antiquity Authority decided to relaunch what they call Operation Scroll, because they noticed some fragments of the Dead Sea Scrolls were showing up on the black market. And look, 300 caves is a lot of caves, and you just can't do it all by yourself. So we were the first foreign team to come in and relaunch Operation Scroll for them. And this particular cave ended up being what we informally called the Cave of the Column, but it was actually designated on the maps as Cave 53. Because of the significance of the findings in this cave, it has now been designated as a scroll cave, and it's been designated as Cave 12.
Now, Bruce, what exactly did you find inside the cave?
We found everything indicative of a scroll cave, like the other caves, like Cave 3. We found niches where they may have carved out in the side of the cave to put a scroll in. So, of course, we found all the Second Temple period type pots, probably 4 or 5 of them after we get them all assembled. We found the wrappings for the scroll. We call those textiles. It's a really tight wove, kind of like a burlap that you would wrap it around the scrolls. We found their bindings. So I've been using the analogy of finding just an ancient building like a library, and you go in and you find all the bookshelves, and you find what wraps around the books, but somebody has taken all of the text out of the books. So this analogy's helped me explain this to some younger people, and hopefully it'll communicate to everybody that we found a cave that was used as a library. And somewhere along the way, some folks looted out the text or the scrolls with text on them. Now, what makes our cave special is that we are now the only cave that archaeologist has found a scroll that was in a store jar. Of course, the store jar was broken, but we did find it. Now, that scroll did not have any writing on it, but it was being prepared or had been prepared for writing on it for something such as a mezuzah, which is the Jewish way of writing a Deuteronomy or an Exodus scroll and then putting it on the doorpost for them. So this is very Jewish, very easily to make the call that Cave 12 should be included with the other 11 caves. So we're very proud of this find, and just I've been using the word this week of kind of overwhelmed, because we expected to find scrolls and things, but when it actually happened, it kind of takes you back, to wow, this really did come true. And so Aaron and I have been saying we're very blessed and thankful that we are now included in the corpus of the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Wow, yeah.
Wow, so that's fascinating. So let me ask you guys this. So you found the scroll that had been prepared. What do you think was going on with this, the fact that they took a scroll and then placed it in the cave without any content on it? Like, what is your thinking about maybe how this was put in there, or was it just an accident? Like, what do you think?
Well, my thought, Aaron, you want to address that?
Well, I was just going to say, Bruce and I was talking about this very thing this morning, because the scroll is a tiny scroll like Bruce described, which is fits the descriptions of a mezuzah. It's about 2.5 inches long or so, 2.7 inches long, but there was no writing on it. So when the team found this scroll, it was in situ. Now the store jar had been broken, and when Bruce said that we're the only cave that has found this in situ is correct. Even though our cave was looted in the 50s, the reason we think that is because in the back tunnel, as they were digging, we found remains of 2 iron pickaxe head where they were digging. And we think the Bedouins went in there and raided the large scrolls. We know that there was probably at least 3 of the large scroll jars back there. They busted the pots, the jars, took the scrolls, but they're not going to excavate. They're not going to look around, any deeper than that, just what's on the surface.
Right.
So they never even saw this other side of the cave that had the ceiling had virtually collapsed on this pot. So it broke it. But when we excavated it, when the team excavated it, they realized that there was a scroll there. It was a leather piece of scroll. Now, to answer your question was, it's blank. We took it to the Hebrew University and realized there was no writing on it. But I think this indicates, as Bruce and I were talking about this thing this morning, was that this is probably a new scroll. And this new scroll was either being prepared to have writing on it, such as Deuteronomy or the passage in Exodus, where they would take that and put it on the doorpost. So it was either for that, or it was a brand new scroll and they put it up there so it could dry out and they were going to go back and write on it later. Whatever the purpose was, I think the intent was when they stored those jars and everything up there, they intended to go back to that cave, and they never got to.
Do you think?
So for this reason, I think the scroll is blank because they can never get back to it. Bruce, if you want to add anything to that.
I was thinking about the whole 10th Legion of the Roman army. They would have come from the north. Our cave is on the south side. And it's possible, like what Aaron said, another alternative is they may have had to leave in a hurry. They may have grabbed up what they had in the scriptorium down there in the Qumran community and headed for the hills. And so maybe they had one ready to start riding on. So that may be why they ran up and put them in the hills. It could be that we know from Cave 8 that it used to be maybe a cave they did some writing in, because we found, the archaeologist over time found oil lamps and what have you. So we're all in speculation mode here of why it was blank, but we all agree that it was prepared, and it probably would have received some type of biblical writing on it, and probably would have been for a mezuzah or some other type of purpose.
Well, as modern thinkers, we have to realize that in the first century, you couldn't just run out to Staples and pick up a pack of 500 scrolls, papyri, ready for writing. You mentioned the 10th Legion, Bruce. Why would that have been significant?
Well, for those who know the history of what happened here, between AD 68 and AD 72, the Romans essentially kicked the Jews out of their own country.
Yeah.
The temple was torn down in AD 70, and so we're very close proximity to Jerusalem there. And then later in 72, just down the beach from this area is Masada, and that fell in 72 AD. Mm-hmm. So somewhere in there, these guys were chased out of their community. And I say these guys because some call them Essenes, some just call them the Qumran community. We don't know exactly who they are. But essentially, these caves were the library that they would stash God's word. They would stash these biblical writings. And it has essentially been the oldest library in the world, and we're able to discern quite a bit. There's been books and volumes written about what has come out of these caves. And so we believe that the scroll we found is interesting in the fact that it didn't have anything on it, but most likely even the looters didn't take it, because we believe there was some cave collapse actually before they made it to it. So we found, what they're saying is, from an archaeological standpoint, we found the first scroll in a store jar, which we think is absolutely phenomenal, and thankful for the find.
So being that these caves were preserved and the scrolls were preserved over time, do you think that when the Romans came in and raided, if they had known about these caves and known about the scrolls, would it have had any value to the Romans? Or is it more of a benefit to have them in the cave long term to protect it from looters?
I'll let Aaron jump on that one.
Well, we don't know why they did that. I don't think the Romans cared anything about Jewish writing, especially the scrolls. They were chasing these, the people out of their homeland, like Bruce said. They basically the community of Qumran separated themselves out of Jerusalem because the temple had been overrun by what they call Gentiles, were the Romans. They said this thing is desecrated. We're separating ourselves out because they had this last days mentality that this was it, man. We're in the last days here. The Romans are here, and we're going to separate ourselves out to the wilderness so we can practice Judaism in a pure form without the idolatry going on. Right. There's a whole thing written about that in the scrolls itself, but we don't know why they hid them up in the caves. I think it was to preserve them, to hide them. I don't think the Romans cared either way about those scrolls. Had they had found them, they probably just would have, I don't think they would have done anything with them, to be honest with you. That's my opinion, because they just didn't care about Jewish history or customs. Right. They were the Romans, and they were going to rule the land, and they did. So we don't understand why they hid them, but whatever that purpose was, for 2,000 years, these scrolls, no one went back to these caves. And for 2,000 years, they sit preserved for a time such as this, from the 1947 and 1957 caves 1 through 11. And then in 2016, 2017 of January this year, we found cave 12 because it is a Dead Sea Scroll cave. That's remarkable because God has really preserved his word, like my colleague Bruce Hall says, God's library for a time such as this, so we can study the scrolls, and now they're available for everyone to see.
Most of us here on this side of the ocean don't really have an understanding of the political sensitivity of the digs at Qumran. This is on the West Bank. So if you could, how difficult was it to get permission from the Israel Antiquities Authority to dig there? And secondly, how much pushback did the Palestinian Authority give to Israel allowing anybody onto what they consider their territory to dig?
Yes, it is a very political charged atmosphere there. And I couldn't speak to all of the background. Dr. Randall Price, who actually is the one who put all this together, he's the one that took charge. But I do know that to do this dig and get the permit, we had to have, of course, Israeli archaeologists go with us, and of course they dovetailed their scroll project into our project, which was neat. But we also had Palestinian archaeologists with us digging because of the fact we were digging in Palestinian territory. I do find it kind of interesting that on the 70th year since the scrolls were found in 1947, now we're in 2017. That the guy who actually, my wife and I came within about 12 inches of finding the store jar with the scroll in it, and we had to stop that day. Well, the next working day, there was the Palestinian archaeology who, essentially rolled back the stones that found the so you can't make this kind of stuff up. That the Palestinian archaeologists found.
He was one of the ones that he's been digging with the Israeli archaeologists for years. He's a vetted, very trustworthy archaeologist, but he's one of the archaeologists who discovered Herod's tomb back in 2006 or 2008,
Wow.
whatever the year was, with Yakov. So this is an incredible person that we had with us. Everybody loved him, part of the team. But he did make the scroll discovery in our cave. We're all excited about that because it changed. Even without that discovery, what we had was enough. We knew we had Second Temple pottery going back to the time of Christ. We had Qumran pottery, which is very specific to the scroll jars. We knew that it housed scroll jars. Like Bruce said, we had the textiles that wrapped the scrolls, the leather straps that tied the scrolls together. We had a lot of things indicating that indeed the larger scrolls was there. So we didn't really need much more evidence. Of course, I like what Bruce said. You know, to have writing on that little scroll would have been a grand slam because of how great that would be. But you know what? We hit a home run, and that home run is huge because we knocked in the 12th, the 12th run on the 12th inning, and it's amazing because now we have new evidence in archaeology from the rocks that's crying out that indeed the Old Testament scriptures are true, and what's happened with the Dead Sea Scrolls has vetted every book of your Old Testament with the exception of the book of Esther. For 2,000 years, it's bridged this gap, and I think that is the most important thing ever. It's one of the most important projects Bruce and I have ever been on.
It's fantastic stuff.
We find it extremely important because essentially the Dead Sea Scrolls were a giant, long-term time capsule where God buried all these scrolls. I call it God's library. And then we were able to unearth it. And then knowing it hasn't been tampered with for 2,000 years sure puts all the skeptics and naysayers who say the Bible's been changed now through the year, at least the Old Testament.
Right.
And we're able to silence them and say, no, we have it right here. And this wasn't just Christian archaeologists doing this work in the 50s. This was a whole, slew of different archaeologists. But let me say this. The excitement level when we found the storage jar with the scroll on it, and we found the other jars, we were just unbelievably excited because we had people coming to the cave, news people, they sent military out, and we're at a very high, fever there with everybody talking about what's going on and people speculating. But it was a time that I will never forget because you're in the moment of history, and that was just spine-tingling for me. And, after all we had been through, we dug for 2.5 weeks and didn't find a thing, basically. All we found was spiders, chiggers, and ticks,
So they got those in Israel too, huh? Okay.
Yeah, I was bitten all up my left arm. I had a rash on my torso and my arms and my neck, and I was shaking at night. So all the pain that we went through, and Aaron will tell you, he bumped his. Everything in the cave you do, you bump something and it hurts. But it all went away when those store jars and that scroll came out of there, because we were just ecstatic and just absolutely overwhelmed with what's going on, and can count ourselves blessed to just be a part of this. So we thank everybody for listening to this, because this is not just our history. This is Judeo-Christian history, and everybody needs to know about it.
Yeah,
Awesome.
that's right.
Before we're done here, guys, I just wanted to add for the SkyWatch viewers that, guys, when you participate and you invest in these digs, when people go out and do this stuff in Qumran in these caves, keep an eye out for this type of stuff, because when you give into these types of processes and into these types of excavations, you can actually be part of unveiling biblical history. I mean, it is an epic. It's an epic opportunity, and a lot of Christians, I don't think, realize how amazing that is. To think if you gave a little bit of money, $100 to support a dig or whatever, you are actually taking part in biblical history. It's simply amazing.
Yeah, I know that you participated in helping Aaron's GoFundMe campaign. I did as well, and it was just a small bit of history. And like Aaron, Bruce, like you guys both said, and so eloquently, you're now part of the corpus of the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Qumran Caves expeditions. Your names will be attached to those discoveries forever, and that is just an awesome thing. And we thank you for taking the time.
We say praise God forever.
Amen.
Yeah, amen.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. By the way, I want to say a personal thank you to you, Derek and Jake, and to many others who gave to help get me there. I wasn't funded. I had to raise my own funds to get there. Thank you so much for getting behind this work and seeing the vision with me. I knew this was something greater than myself or even Bruce. We wanted to get behind to work with Dr. Price and the Israelis. I knew how important this work was. We didn't know exactly if we were going to find anything, but we really had, I think, a hunch that there was something great. Their potential was there. So thank you for helping me get there and making that happen. Thanks for all the 50 people who gave to help make that happen. You know, I have a full-time job, and I just don't do this full-time, but one of these days I would love to. And like Bruce said, we have an opportunity in the future to maybe help with the Israelis on the ongoing efforts of Operation Scroll with Dr. Price, and we're ready to go for the next one.
Amen. Now, this you gentlemen both worked together on the Finding Noah documentary and the search for Noah's Ark, which was a whole different type of environment. You basically went from a frozen land there in the mountains of eastern Turkey to the desert of Judea. I guess you have to ask this because, you know, I like my creature comforts. I mean, I'm not a really, you know, I don't demand 5-star comfort, but for me, camping out is, you know, Super 8, you know. Why do you do it? I mean, subjecting yourself to bitter cold and blazing heat in the summer. Aaron, what is it that drives you to put yourself through that kind of torture?
I don't know. You know, I was teasing Bruce when we got over to Qumran, and I looked at him. I said, how come when I'm always with you, I find myself climbing a mountain in some unknown place around halfway around the world, you know? True. And look, we climbed the highest of heights at Mount Ararat, searching for the Ark at 17,000 feet. And now we're at the lowest place on Earth at the Dead Sea. And I'm trying to just climb up to sea level this time, and I'm out of breath. You know, yeah. I don't know. I think because Bruce and you have to have a passion for this, number one. Otherwise, it becomes work. Let me tell you, that cave is labor intensive. There is nothing fun about manually digging out a lot of dirt and rocks and hauling it and then having to sift all the dirt. You know, we had to shore up the cave with scaffolding. We had to move rocks. We had to build a wall so we could, you know, sift, find a level spot so we can sift. We had 2 operations of sifting going on. Bruce and his wife. Everybody doubled up on something. You know, we all excavated, we all sifted, we all hauled rock and dirt. Everybody did, you know, 2 or 3 different jobs, and it took that. But why do we do it? I think because archaeology is so important. It's one thing that doesn't lie. I mean, when I say that is whatever this archaeology, whatever artifact or whatever thing you're pulling out of the dirt for the first time, that tells you something. It's a maybe a piece of the puzzle, but that tells you something. And what it tells you is a greater picture. When you're able to interpret that and put it into the bigger puzzle, you understand a bigger picture. And what the bigger picture is that there's something from this evidence that's confirming something in the Old Testament or in the scripture. So this is hugely important for Bruce and I, because a lot of archaeologists either won't take the time to go, or they don't want to. They're not concerned about Noah's Ark. They're never going to go do that. They're never going to go get to do a Dead Sea cave excavation because really they just can't get on this type of dig. There was archaeologists who would have loved to have joined Bruce and I, but we couldn't even get them on. Even people we knew, we couldn't get them on the site. This was so locked down, so protected up until the press broke with it. Of course, Hebrew University released the breaking news just 2 or 3 days ago, and then it hit the international news and was picked up by Fox and CNN and BBC and the Smithsonian and a number of international news sources, and this went viral within about 12 hours.
Yeah.
But the reason we do this is because, number one, we have a passion for it. Number two, we love it. We love archaeology. We do it for free. We have done it for free. And number three is because of the potential of the archaeological evidence that would help confirm, and it may be that little piece of evidence of that archaeology that would actually give us and shed some more light onto something further that we can tell other people, like Paul says, to be salt and light in the earth and have a ready hope and an answer for your belief and your faith. And that's what archaeology does. The Dead Sea Scrolls is a great example of that.
That's one of the things that's really amazed me about the research I've done over the last year is how much archaeologists know about the ancient Near East and information that supports the narrative in the Bible, but it never makes it into the churches. So that's why the work that you guys are doing was so interesting and exciting to us here at SkyWatchTV, and why I know Jake and I were both really excited and honored to be just even a small part of the dig. Now, Bruce, as a member of the team, I had read some, shall we say, critics who questioned the motives of the Israel Antiquities Authority in selecting Dr. Randall Price, a Christian, to get into this dig. And in fact, some of these critics were even casting aspersions on Dr. Price's qualifications, which I thought was below the belt. Why is this so politically charged or theologically charged, for that matter? And how often does the Israel Antiquities Authority actually bring in archaeologists from outside Israel?
Well, that is a great question. And Derek, I'm still chuckling at the last segment when you were talking about Motel 8 as rough.
Me and my wife, camping gear, forget it. That's for other people.
When I came down Mount Ararat, I've been a pastor bivocationally for 23 years, and I shared with another pastor the climb of Mount Ararat, and he said to me, he goes, "Wow, I could never do that." He said, "My idea of roughing it is when my motel has a black and white TV." I thought that was great.
Yeah.
It reminded me of your Motel 8. But it's not for everyone. Like Aaron was saying, archaeology, number one, it's either usually extremely hot or extremely cold. And then you have all the different elements out there in the wild, snakes and spiders and ticks and what they call no-see-ums you're dealing with. So it is very difficult. But let me get back to your question, because it's very important to know. Dr. Randall Price is absolutely a top-notch scholar. He has a PhD from the University of Texas. He has more archaeological coursework than I do, which I have quite a bit. And he is phenomenal. A lot of people don't know this, but he actually was on the Qumran dig, leader of the Qumran. That's the ruins there, what they call Khirbet Qumran. Khirbet meaning ruins. And so he was been on that dig for over 10 years and is in the middle of publishing that. So to me, there is no one more right to go into the caves than Dr. Randall Price. And any critics out there should be silenced quickly, because Dr. Price was the right man for the job. He's highly credentialed. He's a world-renowned archaeologist, and he also is the one who did the preliminary work. As Aaron was describing yesterday, there was over 300 caves in that area, just close to the Khirbet Qumran community, and Randall's probably visited half of them. He's the guy that would climb out there and look through them, and he actually narrowed down from those 300 and the other 11 caves, narrowed down to find Cave 53 and say, I think this one has the greatest chance of bearing some Dead Sea Scroll evidence in it. So you have to understand, this was not, hey, let's go look in the cave. This was really a 3-year process of his delineating between all the caves and coming up with the one he thought would be best. So I give him all the credit, and that he's the one who not only chose the cave, he's the one who was able to convince the IAA to go and dig in this, and the American team. Jake was mentioning earlier about the funding of this. Supporters through his ministry, worldofthebible.com.
Right.
and through different supporters. And I, like Aaron, had to raise my own support. So we all had to rely on brothers and sisters back here in the state to fund going to look. But everything that Dr. Price did in these caves was because he understood the political landscape. He understood we were going to be digging in Palestinian territory, and he was able to get through all those political landmines and come to the place where we all could join him on a team. He could only take 16 of us. So as Aaron said, I was selected from my architectural engineering background because there was a column in the cave, and he wanted me to look at that column and weigh in on that, which actually ended up being, kind of a back burner issue based on the fact that we found all this Dead Sea Scroll data that came out of the cave. So I hope I answered your question.
Yeah.
But
well, having to navigate
it's sad.
Having to navigate that political and theological minefield, because you've got, of course, Palestinians upset that Israelis are digging on their territory at all, but then you've got skeptics, atheists and skeptics who are upset that Christians are in there messing with Jewish history, but there are also secular Jews who are not really interested in having the authenticity of the Bible and the Torah verified, validated either. So there are a lot of different things there. And just because he was able to do this successfully, I think Dr. Price would have made a good choice for Donald Trump's Secretary of State, as Rex Tillerson hadn't worked out.
You're absolutely right. And I'd like to go on to say, Dr. Price is not the only Christian archaeologist digging over there. There are many seminaries that are digging in Israel, but we all have to dig with the IIA. It's their country. They're in charge. So we dig with them. And of course, we don't keep anything. It all goes to the IIA or the Hebrew University. And then it is, of course, we get to write about it. So,
Well, and I'm sure when you guys are doing these digs that you develop relationships with people in this community, which probably makes it easier to go back the next time, right?
Exactly. We're already talking about January 2018 going back, and we really do need people to step up and help fund us. It would just be a wonderful thing if Aaron and I did not have to even pick up the phone and call our family and friends and tell them, please send us money. Yeah. It'd be wonderful if somebody would just step up and pay for us, because we intend to be back over there digging again in 2013. 2018.
Do they already have a site or anything in mind, or is there still preliminary work to go on to figure out where's the next place to go?
Well, Dr. Price had, this was his primary choice, and then he has a secondary choice. He was waffling back and forth between the two, and I can't tell you what cave that number that is, because we don't want anybody to beat us out there. Yeah. But he does have another one and even a third one in mind, so we definitely are lined up for the next 2 years.
Now, Aaron, earlier you mentioned the Cave of the Column, and then Bruce, you mentioned the column again here. Talk a little bit more about that, Aaron. What was the significance of the Cave, the column? Is that something that was referred to in another document that we may have heard something about? And what was the hope for finding what might have been in the Cave of the Column?
Yeah, the Cave of the Column is kind of an informal title that we've given this cave. There's no document or empirical evidence that says this is the Cave of the Column. You have to understand there's many caves there throughout the region with columns in it. This happens to be one of them. The column was a rock column that divided the main entryway into two halves. You had, I think, an easterly and what was it, Bruce? Eastern and northern entrance. But yeah, I don't know that. I know one was easternly, but basically it was a rock wall column that they built up to kind of support the entryway of the cave. It was quite precarious. That's why we had to have the scaffolding set up. Right. Listen, I tell you what, though, if there was an earthquake in that region or that stuff decided to fall, that scaffolding ain't going to do anything to save you. Yeah. If you're in there, you're done.
Yeah.
You're not coming out. I just have to tell you that. And that tunnel Bruce and I went into, and Dr. Price and many others on our team went back in this tunnel that you just had to get on your elbows and your stomach and work your way back there with headlamps, and dust mask, and then try to, excavate this pottery in these jars that were back there. It's tremendous, and it's hot. There's no airflow. Wow. All this fine dust that you're breathing. It's terribly miserable conditions, But because of this, we were able to get in there and to look at this. But the Cave of the Column is something that potentially could be referred in one of the other scrolls called the Copper Scroll. I think in previous programs or radio shows, I have incorrectly referred to it as the Temple Scroll. The Temple Scroll does not talk about anything about the Cave of the Column. It's the Copper Scroll, but it doesn't really mention the Cave of the Column. I think it gives a description that we think would be matching the Cave of the Column. We're just not sure, but they tend to think that maybe there was two Copper Scrolls, and of course the Copper Scroll list places where they hid and buried some items, 64 different items from the temple, or
like
silver or gold or whatever. So
utensils for temple service. We're talking.
Well, we don't know. We don't know what it's. We don't know. No one's ever found anything like it. So we don't know. Some people say there's a second Copper Scroll. You have to have that to be able to go find these things. And look, you can't just go digging around in Israel and doing that stuff. We couldn't even be on the site digging had the Israeli archaeologist Dr. Oren Gutfeld holding the permit was not on the site. None of us would be at the site digging. Wow. So it's very strict. Matter of fact, they caught a couple of a handful of, I guess, tomb raiders, or not really tomb raiders, cave raiders, if you will. But they caught some of these guys red-handed in these caves, and these guys got prison terms because they have a harsh sentence for doing this. And like I said earlier, fragments of the Dead Sea Scrolls are showing up on the black market. So they knew we were in a rush against time to get the rest of these caves excavated. But the Cave of the Column is certainly something that's more of an informal title. We don't know if this is the cave that's referenced or not. There's a lot of other caves. Matter of fact, we saw a cave just not too far from us that was huge, and it had a big column in it. And so we just don't know what this thing is, but certainly this cave now is designated as Cave 12, because it is associated with the Dead Sea Scroll Cave.
So let me ask you guys, you talked about a lot of this stuff, or some of these scroll fragments appearing on the black market. Is there any attempt by the Israeli authorities to recover that? Like, how does that all, are they able to recover any of these, or are they just lost once they hit that market?
They don't really have any way to control it, i.e. black market. It's, I'm sure there's been some forgeries, and some people have bought some, what they thought was Dead Sea Scrolls or scrolls from those caves. But all I know is from listening to the Israeli archaeologists is we need to do a more thorough search, like we just did, on probably about 20 caves as fast as we can, so those guys who are digging illegally won't take out any more than what's already been taken out. In other words, we are pressed against time. In fact, that's exactly what was mentioned in the articles that went around the world. So we do feel like time is of the essence, and we need to get on the ball. And so that's why we're planning on being back there next year to see what else we can find. I'd like to say when Dr. Price first started looking at this cave, it had a cursory survey done in '93, and they had marked it as a cave with 2 columns, not 1. And so part of going in there was trying to see if the second column was really a column, meaning built by man, or if it was just natural. And so we were able to delineate that it's not a cave of 2 columns, it's a cave of 1 column. The column is like Aaron described, right there in the front as you go in the entrance of the cave. But I say there's hundreds of caves, and we need to get to them quickly.
Well, as you mentioned, the cave that you were digging in, Cave 12, was looted sometime in the 50s, which was probably after news got around that hey, there were museums willing to pay big money for these scrolls that we found over here, so let's go dig in, see if we can find some of these for ourselves. And so, yeah, probably many of these caves have already been looted, and it behooves the academic community, certainly the nation of Israel, to dig and find as much as they can, as fast as they can. How many other teams? How many teams in all are working there besides the team led by Dr. Price?
Far as I know, Dr. Price is the only team doing this work.
Wow!
I don't know if that's going to change, but Dr. Price was the only one who held the permit on Kirbet Qumran for over 10 years. He's had exclusive rights thus far, and as far as we can tell, he's going to be the leader going forward in this scroll cave dig.
I mean, you'd think that over the last 60 years, the nation of Israel. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to clarify a point. These caves go all the way down. As you're going from the north part of the En-Gedi, which is where we were at, to the south part of the En-Gedi, the caves down at the south part of the En-Gedi are not Qumran caves. There are caves down there, like the Cave of Skulls and the Cave of Letters, the Cave of Treasures, things that was excavated. The Cave of Skulls, I think, was excavated not too long ago, but that's not associated with Kirbet Qumran. The Qumran community of the Dead Sea Scrolls is where Bruce and I and Dr. Price are at. That's north of the En-Gedi, which is where we're at. That's separate from those caves down south. So when there may be other digs going on in caves down in the southern part of the nation, down in the south part of the Dead Sea, that's not associated with Dead Sea Scroll caves.
Okay.
That's something different.
Yeah, it just struck me as a little odd that Dr. Price is the only one leading a team, and that there hadn't been, it seems, any real effort over the last 60 years, unless I misunderstand. I mean, if the last cave, number 11, was found in 1957, was it just, why has there not been another cave discovered over the last 60 years?
Well, it's not that there was not another cave not discovered. The 10 remaining caves after Cave 1 was found in 1947 by those two Bedouin shepherd boys, there was 10 more caves that was found over the next 10 years. 6 of them were found by Bedouins, 4 of them were found by archaeologists. It's not that they don't know the caves are there, it's that there's only a handful of people that can go out and do that work. You got to understand, only 1% is the estimate that I've been told. Only 1% of Israel has ever been excavated. There is a lifetime and a lifetime upon lifetime of work that can be done. Bruce and I and Dr. Price and the team at the Dr. Oren Gutfeld's team on the Israeli side could dig for a lifetime and we would never finish.
Yeah.
There's so much that can be done. So it's not a matter of, not discovering a new cave. It's a matter of being able to have the team and the right people and the permits to do it, because, they decided to relaunch this Operation Scroll and now really put their effort into this operation. Before then, there was other things going on that required their attention. The discovery of Herod's tomb, other things. One of our archaeologists, Palestinian archaeologist, Yosef, was one of the archaeologists with Yaakov who discovered Herod's tomb. So there's major projects going on. Matter of fact, Dr. Gutfeld, who is the Israeli archaeologist that holds a permit, Dr. Price co-directing the operation, has, I think, some 12 archaeological projects going on at the same time.
Wow.
That's just what he's doing. And he put our excavation project, Cave 12, which is what it's now called, but he put this first and foremost priority. All the while, he had 11 other projects that he's juggling. So it's a matter of getting the right team and the permit and getting the support to be able to go do this. But you just can't go do it. You have to have the Israeli support and the permits to be able to do this. And we were in a national park in Qumran, so we had the Israeli Antiquity Authority come. We had the national park people come. We had many people come to check on us, to see what's going on. And look, we've every day we had to haul tools up to the site. We had to haul them down. We had to haul trash down. We were very respectful of the site. We kept everything clean, very respectful of leaving the site in a better condition than what we found it, because it is a nature preserve. So we go the extra mile to make sure that, we can come back on a future dig, such as, a Cave 13 in the future. We don't know what we'll find, but certainly the potential is there to go back and work some more.
And if I had to guess, you'd find that there aren't like lots and lots of people lining up to do heavy manual labor in really hot, dusty, confined spaces. So you're finding those few people who are, well, like you guys, is probably a chore.
Let me just say this, guys. Number one, you do not want to be a person who's claustrophobic
I
on
would
this.
think not.
I can remember I was deep in the cave, and I couldn't hardly move my arms. The dust is just incredible. We've got these dust masks on, but it's still incredible. And I could feel something crawling down my neck, and I couldn't see what it was, and I couldn't bring my hand around to swat it. So I just had to let it crawl on. And I'm telling you, when I tell that to people, they go, absolutely no way am I ever going to be on the cave.
Because I'm thinking, okay, it's probably a scorpion. And, Well, we're thankful for men like you who are willing to go out and do this, and for Dr. Price. I hope to talk to him about this as well. I had the opportunity to talk with him at the Prophecy Conference in Colorado last July, and found it just fascinating. And like I said, I'm an armchair archaeologist. I'll do all of my research from the comfy chair. But thank you, gentlemen. And hopefully we can talk to you guys again before the next session, set of digs. Coming up in January 2018.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Aaron Judkins, Bruce Hall, thank you very much for being with us here on A View from the Bunker. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Derek and Jake.
Yeah, thanks, Derek, for having us on. We really appreciate it.
Please give us a review if you got a spare moment. iTunes Store, Stitcher, wherever else fine podcasts are sold. That helps the search engines find us, and we do appreciate that. And you'll find us at Facebook, facebook.com/View from the Bunker, where we discuss the issues raised during the conversations here. And A View from the Bunker is a production of Gilbert House and released under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License. The opening theme is by Kevin MacLeod, www.incompetech.com. DC Good does the opening narration, and we thank you for listening. Remember, we wrestle not against flesh and blood. I'm Derek Gilbert, and this is A View from the Bunker.